I come from a background of a family that has at least three generations that I know of men specifically dealing with drug addiction, alcohol addiction, and in many cases, prison, jail time, things like that. From like my uncles to my own birth father to grandfather, it was just something that I was very prevalent whenever I was growing up, and not even in a way that I really thought it was weird till later. It was just like, oh yeah, uncle's drunk or somebody's doing this crazy thing or whatever, right? It was just, kind of my upbringing, and that definitely shaped me in a lot of ways in my younger life, as far as uh, just different things affected my self-esteem, my ability to find self-love, self-value, especially because my birth father, he was directly dealing with his own drug addiction, was in and out of like most of my life until pretty much till his death, a couple of years ago from a drug overdose. And so as a young kid, him not being there, and not only not being there, but kind of coming in and out and like going to visit him in prison and just that whole experience. And then getting letters from him, promises broken, that whole thing, being a real young kid and just not really having the tools to navigate that. My mother, trying to handle three kids all on her own while this is all going on, it was a lot to take on. And I could see now in reflection how that, definitely laid the groundwork for me to become super depressed when I was a little kid. And by the time I became a teenager, got into self-harm, and then eventually got into drugs. And after graduating from high school and going into college, just spent a couple of years bouncing between like alcohol and different pills and drugs, and then eventually crystal meth. And I got arrested November 2005. Yeah, November 2005, about a week or so before I turned 21. And that was kind of the beginning of this 3 year on and off, back and forth relationship with the system, with the state, from getting locked up initially, doing 11 months behind bars, getting out, being on probation, getting sent back, doing more time, playing that game for a couple of years till I was like, okay, I got sent back. I got a felony. All in all, I did 18 and a half months in Texas state institutions. And October 2008 was released as a felon in the state of Texas. And, all those things, like clearly like it shaped my path in a lot of ways. Like that was probably a very pivotal moment for a number of reasons, but definitely helping me, I'd say, start to wake up through direct experience of like what the state is capable of. And then, even now, like as somebody who 15 plus years ago was addicted to crystal meth, I don't think people should be put in cages for that. I think there's better ways to go about doing that. The prison system didn't save me or anything. It's a horrible place, but having that time, which is really what I needed, because I remember like when all was crashing and burning and I was dealing with drugs and I was getting sucked into this world that, just kind of took over my life, and all kinds of shady people and shady things. When I was in the midst of that, there was still a piece of me that was like, what the heck are you doing? You need to get out of this. I remember about a week before I got locked up, I was at my mom's house. I came back to her house after being gone for a while, and basically, long story short, she found me in this closet just kind of like sitting there on my knees crying, and she's like, son, like what the heck is going on with you? I was like clearly lost a lot of weight, not in a good place. And I remember just telling her, like, I need a pause, like I need everything to just slow down. It felt like everything was going too fast. Part of it probably had to do with all the drugs I was putting in my system, but just I was in a very bad emotional state as well. And that's really what it felt like. I just need everything to stop, slow down. And then I got locked up, and I got a pause of sorts, not in the way I would have, originally hoped for, wanted, but it was that space and that time, even in prison, it wasn't the place. It was that, okay, look, I know that I'm not going home till at least, 10 months from now. That was like the earliest I was going to get home once I got my sentence. So I was, I just basically chose to use that time to my full advantage. And I started doing like daily journaling, started getting my grandmother, who has always been like a spiritual kind of source in my life, to send me books on prayer and meditation. And, Zen Buddhism is kind of a place I started at. And just, while I was locked up, just started opening up in that way and started writing down my thoughts and really trying to figure out like, how the heck did I get here? Why was I, thinking drugs was going to fix all my problems or whatever, right? And looking at the deeper layers behind that. So like I said, it was truly pivotal for my journey. Fast forward to when I get out. When I get out, I'm a felon now. I can't get a job at certain places. I can't rent certain apartments in the city now because of having this X on my back, as bullseye, as some people call it when you get out. And I was just at the library all the time, applying for jobs, trying to find anything. And in that period of like not only getting sober off all these crazy drugs, but having time away from the world, which even though I was fighting it, that's really what I needed, you know, is just to be away from everything, all the distractions, and just like with myself. And in that period, also, it felt like this cloud of depression and sadness and chaos that I'd been dealing with for so long had kind of lifted. And for the first time, I was able to like enjoy a sunset, you know, feel good about myself, just these things that I really, truly had never experienced in probably the first 20 something years of my life. And up until 23, 24, when I really started to feel some of that self love. And, you know, it's still obviously an ongoing journey. But that was in that space where I realized, like, hey, I'm an intelligent person. I want to learn more about the world. I want to understand more about the world. I've never trusted government, but I don't really know the details. You know, I just know, like, you know, fuck the government kind of thing, like that sort of teen angst or whatever, right? And so in that space of being just let out of prison, sober, clear-headed for the first time in a long while, excited about life, I started just diving in. I started by researching the drug war because I just got out of prison for drugs. And then from there, you know, I read Rule by Secrecy by Jim Mars and a few other books that just, you know, down the rabbit hole. And, you know, it's been a journey since then. Along the way, I got into journalism and started taking all that stuff seriously. But yeah, I don't think any of these things would have happened without, for whatever reason, me having to go through that first. You know, like I wish there was probably a different way, but it's been an interesting path at least.